So we're back with our 2006 6.0 diesel. I got the short block assembled and got the oil cooler in, high pressure oil pump, front and rear cover, water pump, flex plate, crank dampener. Everything's all torqued and ready to go. So I set my cylinder head on there. The first thing I do is, this is a newly machined block and it's got brand new pistons in it. So, of course, I washed it with soap and water before I assembled it. But oil the cylinders up again, take some wax and grease remover, clean the fire deck surface. Same thing on the cylinder head. I'm replacing one of the cylinder heads with a new one. This is one of the original heads. I had it gone through. Clean the surface up on the cylinder head, put the gasket on there, clean and dry. That's the way you want it. Set it on there. I always put the upper bolts in to kind of hold it, make sure that it's not going to fall off of there when I'm screwing around doing other things. So I got my push rods in, and one thing that you want to inspect when you have these apart is the rocker bridges. They're slotted on one end on the later engines. The early ones are slotted on both ends. I'm not really sure what the benefit is of that, because this hole isn't going to allow it to move much. But anyway, when you put these on, you got a round hole and an oval hole on one end, and I alternate them. Like, I'll put this one up, next one down, do them that way. I don't really care where these came from, which order. If it was a Duramax, I'd keep everything absolutely together and put it back together the same way. So, because they have an adjustable valve train, and that way I'm not going to have to do much valve adjustment on them when I get them back together. But anyway, the thing you want to watch out for on these, like the last cylinder head I replaced had some bad valve guides. Well, when those valves are wobbling around, this thing will start tracking off sideways, and it'll wear them. It'll not only will it round off the top of the valve, but it'll also start running sideways. And that's where I ran into my issue with the rocker arms. They were wanting to run sideways like this a little bit, and that's what screwed them up. That's why I had to replace them. So inspect all of these rocker bridges, and then what I do is I use good old number 5 lubriplate grease, and I'll go and just put a dab on each valve tip. And this, not only lubrication, but it'll also hold those on there when I put the rocker carrier on. So just put a little dab on there. I'll do the push rod tips too. I've already oiled the other end, so I'll do the tips of the push rods where they fit into the rocker arm. Okay, that's done, and then I'll go ahead and install my rocker bridges, and remember to alternate them. This one's, I usually start up from the front, and next one will go down. Oops, went the wrong way there. Okay. Okay, so on the rocker arm, this one's all screwed up, but you got a little ball tip that swivels in there and a retainer that holds it in. These are just little flat pad rides on the rocker bridge. So I'll go through and just put a little bit of assembly lube on the point where that makes contact. So I've already got my gasket on my rocker carrier, and I'm doing this wrong, but I've been doing it for 20 years, same engine. So I guess maybe I'm not doing it wrong, but I'm not doing it by the book. So I don't disassemble the valve train. What I do on these is I'll go through, I already went through and I replaced all the retainers, the plastic retainers on the rocker arms, and I inspected all the rocker arms, make sure all my pads look good, they all swivel, and make sure the retainers aren't broken, and these are all in really good shape. So then I'm going to set this rocker carrier down on the cylinder head, kind of line everything up, and then there's two dowels on these, and the dowels go into the head, and there's bolts that go through. So I'm going to stick those bolts in there. And this will help line this up. Make sure you get those dowels kind of started in there so that when you start tightening your bolts, or in this case I'm using studs, it'll go down straight. So, and it'll also pull the back of this top of this rocker carrier down so that I can engage my push rods. So that's really where you're going to have the problem when you're doing it this way. So you gotta be careful. And as you tighten it down, tighten your nuts down, in this case I'm using studs, you want to make sure that all of your push rods are engaged, because I've had a situation where before, if you're not paying attention when you do this, you know, you'll actually catch kind of the side of the push rod, and then this valve will be open, you know, because it won't be down in the socket here. So usually when you roll the engine over, it'll pop in there, but sometimes it doesn't. And then you'll have a valve hanging open, and then you'll have a cylinder misfire when you start it, and you'll wonder why. So when you're doing it this way, you just want to be careful as you're torquing it down. You want to make sure that, you know, all of your push rods are engaged, and they're all, you know, none of them are cocked off to the side. So I think all of these, yeah, all of these are touching right now, so we're good. So we're going to put our studs in now. I always put the studs in after, because trying to lift that head or set that head over the studs, these heads are about 70 pounds, so I mean, even if you're using your floor crane, it's still hard. So just put the studs in afterwards. Also, when you're doing a head gasket job, these holes were clean, but you want to blow all your holes out before you're done cleaning to get all the oil, because they'll usually they're going to have oil in them. So if you try to put the studs in, you're going to get kind of a hydraulic going, and it's going to push that oil out all over your fire deck, under your gasket. If you had, you know, like if these had oil in them right now, it'd be pushing oil onto the fire deck surface under the head gasket, and it's all clean, and we don't want that. This little driver is pretty wimpy, and they say don't, you know, put these in by hand. Okay, I will. I'm using my hands. I have it set pretty light, so the clutch on this. So I'm going to run them down. I'm not too worried about it on this, but on an engine, you know, where you're doing head gaskets and putting these in, a lot of times, you know, there might be a little bunch of crusty oil down there that didn't come out of the hole. So I'll go through and snug them by hand. Just put a ratchet right there. And they don't need to be that tight. I mean, you don't want to torque them in there. You just want to snug them. They say hand tight. See, this one didn't go down all the way because I didn't actually lube the threads, because I don't want any oil in those holes. So. Okay, so that's ready to go, and I'm gonna look and see the way the valve timing is right now, the, this head here, you're going to have more pressure on one end of it than the other. The other head, because I have this set at 6 o'clock, when I put the rocker carrier on, it's going to go down pretty much flush because of the way the valve, what valves are open and stuff right now. So I'm going to go ahead and put my washers on there. Yeah, I think I'll use my ARP lube. This is kind of the messy part here, and lubing these washers up. What I usually do, I'm just going to put a little film on both sides, and then install them over the studs. Different people might do this different ways, but this is the way I've been doing it for, almost 20 years now on these. So I only change if I find an issue and I need to figure out what I'm doing wrong and change my method a little bit. But so far, this works.